She hadn't meant to fall asleep. Not on a stranger. Not on a man whose jacket was frayed at the cuffs and whose tired eyes carried the weight of a life she had never known. Yet somewhere above the clouds, at 37,000 feet, the most powerful woman in the cabin had rested her head on the shoulder of a single father, and what happened next would leave her speechless. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when strangers choose compassion, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Kindness Journal. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The morning had started like every other high-stakes day in Seraphina Vale's life. The sun rose over the city skyline, painting the glass towers gold, and she stood alone in her penthouse office reviewing the numbers of a billion-dollar merger. As CEO of Vale Industries, Seraphina was known for her precision, her composure, and her refusal to let emotions interfere with decisions. Her calendar was packed months in advance. Her assistants filtered every call. She hadn't taken a real vacation in 6 years. This flight to Chicago was supposed to be simple: deliver the keynote speech at a global innovation summit, shake hands with investors, and close a deal that would cement her company's future. But the previous night had been brutal. A crisis with overseas suppliers had kept her awake until dawn. By the time she arrived at the airport, her mind felt like a stretched wire, one wrong move away from snapping. She barely noticed when the gate attendant informed her that a last-minute aircraft change had shuffled seating assignments. Her usual first-class seat had been reassigned, and though the airline scrambled apologetically, the only remaining option was an aisle seat in premium economy. Seraphina almost protested. Almost demanded they fix it. But the boarding time ticked closer, and efficiency won over pride. That was how she found herself seated beside Rowan Castillo. Rowan carried a small backpack and a worn leather satchel. His clothes were clean but faded, the kind that had been washed too many times. A little girl with dark curls and enormous curious eyes clutched his hand until the last possible second before a flight attendant gently guided her toward the front of the plane. Seraphina noticed the girl's tearful protest and Rowan's steady reassurance, his voice low and calm as he promised he would be just a few rows behind her. Seraphina assumed they were traveling together until she overheard the explanation. The little girl, Maris, was flying for the first time as part of a pediatric medical program. She had a rare heart condition. Rowan had fought for months to secure a spot at a specialized children's hospital in Chicago. Because of limited seating arrangements organized by the charity, Maris had been placed with a volunteer escort in the forward section, while Rowan had taken the only seat he could afford. As the plane ascended into the bright morning sky, Seraphina tried to focus on her presentation slides. But fatigue crept over her like a heavy blanket. Her head throbbed. Her eyelids drooped. She told herself she would just close her eyes for a moment. She didn't realize when gravity pulled her sideways. She didn't feel the exact second her temple rested against Rowan's shoulder. But Rowan felt it. He stiffened at first, unsure what to do. The woman beside him radiated authority even in sleep. Her tailored blazer, the diamond watch at her wrist, the quiet buzz of notifications from her phone, everything about her spoke of power and distance. Yet her face, relaxed in slumber, looked unexpectedly fragile. Rowan did nothing. He did not shift. He did not clear his throat. He simply adjusted his posture slightly to support her more comfortably, as if balancing something precious. Outside the window, daylight flooded the cabin. Clouds stretched endlessly beneath them, soft and blindingly white. Midway through the flight, turbulence hit without warning. The plane jolted sharply, and a collective gasp rippled through the passengers. Seraphina startled awake, disoriented, her hand instinctively gripping Rowan's arm. For a split second, embarrassment flushed through her as she realized where she was. But before she could apologize, she heard something else. Crying. Not the usual fuss of a restless traveler. This was urgent, panicked sobbing from the front of the plane. Maris. Seraphina watched as Rowan's face drained of color. The seatbelt sign glowed, and the attendants urged everyone to remain seated. Rowan's knuckles turned white as he strained to see past the rows ahead. The crying intensified. Without thinking, Seraphina pressed the call button above her seat. Her voice, steady and commanding even in crisis, cut through the chaos. She identified herself, not to boast, but to be heard, and asked for immediate information. Within moments, an attendant hurried back, explaining that Maris was frightened by the turbulence and complaining of chest discomfort. The volunteer escort was trying to calm her, but Rowan wasn't allowed to move while the sign remained on. Seraphina saw something in Rowan then that pierced her carefully guarded heart. It wasn't just fear. It was helplessness. The kind that comes from fighting every day for someone you love and still feeling like it's not enough. When the turbulence eased slightly, Seraphina unbuckled despite protocol and spoke firmly to the attendant. She requested a temporary seat swap, offering her own place and leveraging every ounce of influence she possessed. There was hesitation, whispers, quick consultations with the captain. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, permission was granted. Seraphina moved forward to sit beside Maris while Rowan was escorted up. She took the little girl's trembling hands and spoke softly, describing the clouds as giant cotton fields and the plane as a brave bird cutting through the wind. She kept her tone warm, steady, and reassuring. Rowan reached them, relief flooding his features as he wrapped his daughter in his arms. Seraphina stepped back, watching the reunion. Maris clung to her father, her sobs gradually quieting against his chest. In that bright, shaking cabin, something shifted inside Seraphina Vale. She thought of her own childhood, of long afternoons spent alone in boarding schools while her parents chased corporate dreams. She remembered wishing someone would choose her over a meeting, over a deal, over ambition. When the plane finally stabilized and the crisis passed, Seraphina returned to her seat in silence. Rowan followed later, his eyes red but shining with gratitude. He tried to thank her, but words failed him. The rest of the flight unfolded differently. They talked, not in formal pleasantries, but in honest fragments. Rowan told her about working double shifts as a high school janitor after his wife passed away unexpectedly. About learning to braid Maris's hair by watching online tutorials. About the nights he stayed awake listening to her breathing, afraid it might stop. Seraphina listened. Really listened. For the first time in years, quarterly profits and shareholder expectations felt distant compared to the quiet courage of the man beside her. When the plane began its descent in the bright afternoon sun, Seraphina made a decision that startled even herself. She asked Rowan about the hospital, about insurance gaps, about the cost of ongoing treatment. He hesitated, pride flickering in his eyes, but he answered honestly. By the time the wheels touched the runway, Seraphina had drafted an email to her foundation director. Vale Industries had a philanthropic arm she rarely involved herself in directly. That was about to change. At the gate, as passengers stood and gathered their belongings, Seraphina turned to Rowan with a softness no boardroom had ever witnessed. She handed him a simple business card, not with her assistant's contact, but her personal number. Weeks later, after a successful surgery funded quietly through a grant that happened to be expedited, Maris sent Seraphina a crayon drawing of an airplane flying over cotton clouds. On one wing was a tiny stick figure with curly hair. On the other was a tall figure with long hair and a bright sun above her head. Seraphina framed it in her office. Her keynote speech in Chicago had gone well. The merger closed. Headlines praised her leadership. But none of it compared to the moment she received a video of Maris running, truly running, for the first time without losing breath. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that even the smallest acts of kindness can change the course of someone's life, please take a moment to like, share, and leave a comment. Your engagement helps spread these stories of hope further than you know. And before we close, comment, kindness still exists, if you believe one compassionate moment can transform a life. Seraphina still flies often. She still runs a global empire. But now, whenever the plane rises into the bright daytime sky, she looks out at the endless clouds and remembers the weight of her head on a stranger's shoulder, and the way that stranger's quiet strength reminded her what success is truly for. Not power. Not prestige. But people.